Real people, real stories, real f***ing life. The Relentless Project. And now, your host, the man on a mission to ignite your inner fire, Ish Lopez. So sit back, relax, and prepare to be inspired.
All right, so we're just going to dive right into it. Cool. I've actually mentioned you either subtly or not so subtly in a few of my episodes. So I'm glad that I can actually bring you on. I appreciate you jumping on this. You didn't even hesitate. So
I'm honored to be here, man. And honestly, I'm humbled by it because as we were talking, like, I have this feeling of like, man, I don't really bring much to the table. So I'm honored. So thank you.
It's funny you mentioned that because you just have this impact with people that surround you, like either at work. I kind of know you outside of work as well, and It's the same thing. Like everyone around you only has amazing things to say. So I'm actually honored that you're here.
We haven't talked to the right people.
Yeah. Well, so this is the one with Ash. I've also referred to him as James. So here we are. As we go in, just so people could get a little understanding of how and why you are wired the way you are, and they will understand by the end of this episode what I mean. But can you tell us a little bit about your upbringing, your early life, things you've done, influences, things that people who've shaped you? Just give us a little rundown.
Yeah, we could go down some deep rabbit holes on this, and I'm gonna try to keep it relatively brief-ish, to the point. But yeah, man, we've talked a bit before. I didn't have the most common childhood. Some struggles, right? My dad was an alcoholic, and my very first memory as a kid, like my earliest memory, was of me protecting my little sister under a dining room table while my dad was throwing my mom around the house, punching out windows, smashing her into walls and things like that. That's my very first memory. I was probably 3, and my sister was about 1. And the rest of my childhood kind of looked a lot like that. My parents split when I was 4, and my mom remarried a few years later, and my first stepdad was twice the monster my dad was. Not a great human. And years later, I learned some things about my dad that, some things and some traumas that he had been through that gave me some compassion for his behaviors. It made me have more of an understanding as to why he became the person he did. And it wasn't because he hated other people or that he was a bad human. The things that he had been through in his life broke him, and it was all self-punishment. He didn't like the person he was, and the things that had happened to him. He was a victim of some things, and he didn't know how to express it. He didn't know how to manage it, and he didn't quite know how to love other people. And so that carried on into how he treated my mom and treated people around him. So that was kind of like my very first early experience as a kid. My mom, however, she's the most loving, wonderful human I've ever met in my life. She would give you everything if she thought it would make you happy. An amazing woman. And she did the absolute best that she could with me and my siblings, with the resources that she had. Grew up very low income. There were times when, like, toothpaste wasn't an option. We couldn't afford it, so we used like baking soda. And I say that because, like, my story is not unique. I'm not special, and I'm not saying that because I want like sympathy or someone to like look at me differently. But I'm saying that because I know there's tons and tons of families out there like that. And you know, it was formative as to who I am today. Being able to do more with less, being able to take the things in your life and make you better. So yeah, I know that my story is not unique.
That's it's interesting because when I grew up, I thought I did have a great life. I'm not
Sure.
going to say I didn't. I grew up single mom home.
Yeah.
She worked multiple jobs. I had an older brother, younger sister, and she busted her ass to give us, I had new shoes, new clothes to go to school. It wasn't the name brand nice stuff. We shopped at Payless. We shopped at it was Kmart at the time, RIP Kmart. But I grew up now looking back in a tough environment. When I tell people my childhood, the things that I can disclose,
Sure.
people look at me and they go, "Oh wow, man, I'm so sorry." I'm like,
no,
no,
that
dude,
was normal.
Yeah, no, for me I had to survive. I remember, dude, I used to do little jobs on the side just to make money, but I grew up. My older brother in and out of trouble and and it's just the environment we were surrounded by. And I would not change that for the world. Like if someone came to me and said, "Hey, you're able to change like anything in your past, what would you change?" I wouldn't change it. And you say you don't have and there's a lot of kids who grow up like us or like you, and even worse.
Absolutely.
And to them, it's like, it's the end of the world. I will never amount to anything. And what do you think was that fork in the road for you? Because you could have easily become a victim of your environment.
Yeah.
You could have been, you could have taken your dad's brokenness and owned that into yourself, Yeah,
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know I don't think there's any one thing. So my gramps was a huge influence on me. And I grew up in the church, very, very, very religious, extreme fundamentalist Christian, strong faith background. And so a lot of the lessons from the Bible of embrace suffering, for suffering brings perseverance, perseverance brings character, and character brings hope. So I would take nuggets like that and try to apply them to what was going on in my life, or do all things as if unto the Lord. So when I'm doing forced labor when I'm 11 years old, okay, this isn't about me. I just got to do my best. I had to change my perspective and think to myself, hey, these things going on in my life, there's a reason for this, and all things end well. I just haven't seen it yet. So if it's not good yet, it's not the end yet.
I truly believe that. I believe to my core, especially now as an adult.
Yeah.
And, I grew up, my family was Pentecostal. So they call themselves the soldiers of Christ because they are
extreme.
Yeah. And actually scared me from the church. Now as an adult, it all comes full circle. But that is so true in the sense of, here's I always say famous quote in my episodes. Famous quote, embrace the suck.
Absolutely.
That premise comes from doing the process, knowing something good comes at the end, even if you can't see it.
Yeah.
And if you apply that to the majority of things you do in life, good things will happen.
Yeah, and it's about how your perspective, because we can't control the things that happen to us or happen around us. All we can control is our perspective and how we respond to those things. That's the only thing we can control. And so if we allow our minds to go astray and allow our minds to go down paths of despair, depression, fear, and we sit and ponder on those possible terrible outcomes, or think to ourselves, hey, this is never going to change. My life is always going to be miserable. There's no reason for this suffering. If we allow ourselves to sit in that space, it becomes self-fulfilling. That's what it becomes. And I know you and I have both been there where things have happened where we're like, man, this is terrible. Maybe had moments of depression, had times when things seemed absolutely hopeless. That's normal to experience those feelings. We just can't sit there and wallow in it. We have to be able to move on.
I'm glad you mentioned that because people see me, this platform that I'm trying to build, the people I bring on, and they think we have it all figured out.
Dude,
I'm going to
not
tell
even
you,
close.
I'm going to say it flat out. I am not perfect. I am not awesome. I am not great. I'm just trying to do good and do good for those around me. That's literally what it boils down to. And the people I bring on are people who have exhibited leadership, integrity, people who are kind of like me. Like, I've been broken.
Sure.
I will be broken again, but I will not allow myself, like you said, to stay in that brokenness. As soon as I feel myself in that, like I get waves of depression that I can't even talk about because people would be, worried.
Yeah. Right.
And then I like, there'll be a day where I'm like, whoa, what am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why? No, I can't.
Yeah.
And then I have to dive deep into my routine and, break open my Bible, which I should be doing every day, but I don't, But my routines that have fulfilled me and made me, when I'm feeling good, doing good, I throw those out slowly until one day I realize, like, man, I haven't been doing any of the stuff I should be doing.
Yeah.
And that's how I am able to get myself, that routine I've built that has worked, when I start straying from that, just coming back and trying to dig back into my routines and stuff. And I'm glad you mentioned that. Like, we all will feel that.
Absolutely.
But we have to acknowledge it, check ourselves, and begin if the process is reaching out to someone. Hey, man, I'm struggling. I'm hurting. Like, and we've had conversations where I'm like, hey, dude, like, my couple tests that I have taken recently.
Sure.
I've beaten myself up. I was in a dark place. It's something I've always wanted for myself, and I was in a dark place. And then I tell myself, like, if that is meant for me, it will come.
Exactly.
I just have to do the things required to make it happen.
Yep.
And then show up and try again, and try again, and try again, and try again, until I reach the point where I'm like, this isn't for me. I need to try again.
Yeah.
So
I know for me, like, my wife, she's amazing. She is an absolute bedrock for me. When I start getting those moments where I'm starting to feel down, like, it'll feel like a cloud coming in. Like, if you're looking at the horizon, you can kind of see a storm rolling in from the distance. That's kind of what it feels like for me when that little bit of, like, depression, or I call it the funk, and I'll tell my wife, like, hey, I feel like I got a little bit of a funk coming on. She's like, all right, so today you go to jiu-jitsu, go to the gym, let's do some food prep, let's do the right things. And she really is that touchstone, that kind of that guiding bedrock for me of someone that I can confide in safely. She has a very similar background to me, and she and I often bounce things like this off each other. We are absolute partners in our marriage and in our life. We do all of the things together, but that also means we're working on our emotional health and healing and staying strong and productive together as well.
Awesome. Wow. That's awesome, man. All that combined, your childhood, what made you decide to join the Marines? We're jumping right into that because
cool.
I feel like a lot of your past, like, put stones
absolutely
and built this foundation of, you're very protective. You're very, like, you care about those around you. You care about their upbringing, their everything. Like, when you talk to people at work, when you talk about your family, when you talk about, the guys at Lodestone, shout out to Lodestone, like, you are always trying to build things around you. And it's because I feel these blocks have been placed into you. So what caused you to jump into the Marines, and why the Marines and not, the Army? Just for our viewers. For the viewers.
Yeah, so I'm gonna sound like a dork. Here, I'm gonna sound like a total nerd. All right. So from the time I was a little kid, I always wanted to play the saxophone.
It's my favorite instrument, by the way.
And so my mom, when I was 9 years old, like I said, we didn't have a ton growing up. She saved up for like an entire year, and went to the local thrift shop and spent $90 on a saxophone for me. And that was big spending. That was big spending then, right?
Big spending now.
Yeah, but like she probably didn't eat so that she could buy me the saxophone. Wow. That's the kind of woman she is, an amazing woman. And so I get the saxophone for Christmas on my when I was 9 years old, but we don't have money for like lessons or anything. So the saxophone came with like this little book, like how to play the saxophone for beginners, right? And so from the time I was like 9 to 12 or 13, I was essentially teaching myself how to play. Fast forward junior high, high school, I moved around a lot. I moved something like 18 times before I graduated high school, moved in different, multiple different states and things like that. So I play saxophone through junior high, high school. I'm in the jazz band and I do all kinds of musical stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm a total dork, dude. I really am.
Could have never guessed. That's
nerd.
Awesome, though, man.
So I knew I couldn't afford college. And because of some things going on in my life, mostly with my first stepdad, I didn't do well in school. I allowed the things at home to affect how I perform in school. And so I had all honors classes. I'm a smart guy, but I graduated in the bottom half of my class because I didn't do the work. And for a long time, it was a point of shame for me because I knew I was capable of so much more, but I didn't perform and it affected the rest of my life. So I knew I wasn't getting a scholarship. I knew I couldn't afford college and I thought I was gonna play the saxophone. Like that's what I thought I was gonna do. And so someone mentioned to me, hey, why don't you join the military? They have like the band. You could join the military band. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I started looking at the military for the military band.
Damn.
Yeah, dude, I'm a total dork.
That's awesome though, because like I believe the military serves like you could do anything in the military. You do your time.
So my thought was I can join a military service. I can get the GI Bill and have them pay me to go to college. I could join the band and they can pay me to learn how to play. Like, oh, this could be an answer, right?
Check.
Yeah, I like it, right? And so I go to the different branches of service. I go to the Army, checked out the Navy. Didn't look at the Air Force, I'll be honest.
Nothing against the Air Force.
No, I'm just not. I'm not wired that way, I guess. But I went and talked to the Marine Corps, and the recruiters that were like, oh, so this is like, so the year is 2000 that I'm talking to these guys. So before 9/11, we're in a time of peace, essentially, or that's what it appeared to be. So they weren't really actively trying to recruit people that hard. And so I talked to the Marines. So like, yeah, we don't have any bonuses. We don't have any sign-ons. If you want to be a Marine, you want to be a Marine. If you don't, go pound sand and talk to somebody else. I'm like, I like this.
You're speaking my language.
I'm digging this, right? And so concurrent with all this, I started wrestling, right? Junior high, 7th grade, I started wrestling. So there was this kind of like innate savagery and primal aggression that you get when you have like this competitive wrestling team, right? It's different than jiu-jitsu, which is like flowy sometimes. And like when you go to jiu-jitsu practice, it's like, all right, here's a technique. Try not to muscle it. Try to be smooth. Wrestling practice in high school, dude.
Violent.
Brutal. And I loved it.
Dude,
I loved it.
I like cross-train in other gyms.
Yeah.
And like my grappling experience is jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And then I'll go to like a wrestling gym.
Like Mat Factory or
Dude,
something.
and they're just like dogs, straight dogs.
So I went to the Marine Corps recruiter's office and I'm looking at these guys. I was like, this kind of feels like wrestling practice. This feels like that primal, innate savagery. And it like tickled something in my soul. I was like, this feels right. This feels like what I need to do. And so the recruiter was like, all right, well, we're going to play this video for you. This is the video we play for recruits to scare them away. It was like the boot camp video, right? Like the drill instructor was like yelling and screaming at people and low crawling through mud and talking about the crucible where you don't like get any sleep for, 3 days and you're getting tested. And I was like, ooh, this is what I want. This is it right here.
Do you have part 2? Give me part 2.
Yeah. So I was sold, man. Like the thing that was supposed to push me away, I was like, this is what I want. I was like, can I join the band? They're like, what?
Talking of savage, it's like you see this video of just straight gruesome yelling, screaming, and you're like, I want to do that and play the saxophone.
Yeah. So the recruiter was like,
He belongs here.
I guess you can join the band. I mean, we don't really have a whole lot of options open. We don't have any spots. So when I signed up, there was no spots for like the band available. And my other 2 options were infantry reserve or active duty motor transport, or open contract. And I knew I didn't want to be reserve, because I didn't want to do it part-time. I wanted something to change the trajectory of my life, because I was not in great spots, and things were really, really, really challenging, and I felt like I needed to kind of take control a little bit and drive the direction of my life. So I knew I wanted to be full-time. So Marine Reserves weren't an option. So the only options for active duty were motor transport, which is like a truck driver. Like if you're just going to be loading things onto a flatbed and driving it around, or open contract. So I signed up open contract with the option of trying out for the band.
So what's open contract for those who don't know?
Yeah, that's a good question. So open contract means that you're going to sign up and you're essentially going to be put where the Marine Corps needs you. Like they have a need for intelligence, or they have a need for a radio operator, or whatever they have a need.
You're signing your life away to be put
wherever they want.
Okay.
Yeah. And what they do is they look at the needs of the Marine Corps, and then your testing. Like, how did you do on your entry intelligence testing? And so they match up what they perceive your skills are with where they have a need. And if they have some kind of crossover, they try to put you in a spot that satisfies both. So I go to do this test for the band. It's like a tryout, right? And so I'm doing this test with that same saxophone my mom bought me when I was 9 years old, and now I'm 18, right? And, there's a reason for everything, right?
Absolutely.
There's a reason for everything.
Absolutely.
So I'm doing the test, and like pads start falling off my saxophone. Like it just starts falling apart.
It's never done that before.
It has.
Oh.
The thing was old.
You were playing the hell off that saxophone.
Yeah,
so
that saxophone was made in like 1916. It was old. Right?
What alto?
So I learned on an alto, and I played baritone through high school and junior high.
So pads start falling off.
Yeah, so I'm
like,
doing my tryout. Like,
fuck this.
And I get one try. That's it. Like, all right, you didn't pass. So you're open contract. That's it. I'm already signed the contract. I'm already in. Like, I already enlisted, right? I'm in the delayed entry program. So I signed up in January of 2001. I went down to the recruiter's office, and I went up to MEPS, the Military Entrance Processing Center, and signed up, did my thing. I actually tried, since I was open contract, they try to place you or determine where you're best fit. So one of the tests I did was called the D-Labs, the Defensive Language Aptitude Battery, essentially like cryptology and code breaking. And I said I'm a pretty smart guy. I scored really, really high on that. But I had been arrested, within the last 2 years prior to that for shoplifting. And so they're like, well, you're a smart guy, but this thing isn't far enough back. So
joke's on them.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so I'm open contract, and I fail my band test. And so at this point, I have a boot camp date already set. September 18th, 2001 was the already predetermined time, right? So I wanted to be able to spend like one last summer at home with my family, my friends. Like I graduated in June of 2001, and so I was like, all right, I'll take the summer off. I'll see my grandparents again. And then in September, when the summer's over, then I'll go do my thing. Because to me, I'm gone. I'm never coming back.
Yeah, that's your ticket.
I'm done.
Out, yeah.
Right. So I wanted to spend one last summer at home. So September 11th happens. I'm open contract. I have no idea what may come next. We're under attack, and I have boot camp starting in 6 days. Or I'm leaving for boot camp in 6 days.
Post 9/11.
Yeah, I start boot camp 7 days after 9/11.
Wow.
That's my first day. So I'm leaving a few days before that for the travel and, to get to, MCRD San Diego.
So I know, I went through the Army boot camp. It can be tough. How was that called? Like, post 9, like not even post, because we're in 9/11.
Yeah.
Like 9/11, we're in it. Like,
it was
how
a
was
little
that
spicy.
environment? Like, without divulging too much, like, what was the mindset there? How, like?
So the mindset was, you are going to war, and you are all going to die.
Wow.
And if you don't do this right, you're going to die. They treated boot camp like a prisoner of war camp. That was the mindset. Like, we are going to be as hard on you as possible, because if you're captured, we don't want the enemy to do anything to you that you can't already mentally handle. So, obviously there's rules and regulations, things they can and can't do, and they didn't violate any of those with me.
They would never.
Per se.
They're very creative.
They're very creative. We did have a couple of drill instructors get relieved of duty following some investigations, but it was productive.
If you sign up for the military,
Yeah.
like, the people in charge of building you are doing just
They're
that.
trying to make warriors.
Yeah.
This is not an HR organization.
It's
This
never
is not
been.
a civilian organization. Their job is to make warriors and to make strong people. And the only way that you can make strong people is through adversity. You can't do it any other way. There's no sailor that's been ever made in calm waters. You can't make a strong person in a nice environment.
Adversity, like hard things, tough things.
Yeah.
That's how you are built. That is how your character is tested. That is everyone can be awesome when given the right environment.
So here's an interesting study that was done. There was a biodome that was made, like an enclosed environment space, and they were growing trees inside this biodome. There was no wind. They had like artificial sunlight. They had it was all a controlled environment, but there was no wind. These trees, when they grew, they broke under their own weight, because the wind and storms and the adversity of the environment is what makes the trees strong. They didn't have any of that. And as they grew, they broke under their own weight because they never had adversity.
I feel like that's what's happening in society right now.
Absolutely.
We've created this, this stigma of instant gratification. If you don't get it now, then it's hard. You can order food at the drop of a dime. I've talked about this with Lou.
And it just shows up at your house.
Everything of convenience, and if you never try to do anything hard, or you never try to do anything extra, everything is just. We live in a society where everything's handed to us right now.
Absolutely.
Everything is handed to us,
and even the things that are hard are handed to us. Like, you can sign up for a Spartan race.
You can,
and here, we'll make these obstacles for you.
Yeah. But that being said, the people who willingly go out and do that,
absolutely,
like, their mindset, they're getting built.
That's right.
When I did mine, I was a broken man,
emotionally or physically,
both.
Okay,
because that's a story for. No, we may get into it. We'll depend, because I don't want to get off track, but. Doing hard things, that adversity is what builds people. And that's crazy about those trees, man.
Yeah. So boot camp.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was a little spicy. But the mindset there was, we are going to combat. And I'm open contract, so I don't know what I'm going to be. The only thing I know I'm not going to be is infantry. Because in order to be infantry, you have to deliberately sign up for that. But they can make you anything else other than infantry. So at that time, they were telling us, hey, a radio operator, your lifespan in combat is about 45 minutes, because the enemy wants to take out the radio operator first, because that's your line of communication back. Yeah. If you are, anything else, right? They had these things prepare for this, and if you're open contract, guess what? You're fucked.
We're gonna put you
right
where you need it.
Right, wherever we need you to be. And we're gonna put you in those spots where we're having the people die the most. Because that's where we need more bodies. Because right now you're just a body in uniform. That's all you are. And so my mindset going through this is like, man, I better really put in on this. I better really learn. I better really own this and do my best, not for me, but because the men and women to my left and right are depending on me. And that was, to me, one of the big turning points for boot camp, was realizing that this is not about me. This is about the man to my left and to my right. And if I fail, if I fall, I'm letting them down. It's not about me. And so that was my mindset. And then so going through boot camp, it's like 3 months long, like 13 weeks. And then the crucible is at the very end, or close to the end. And it's in the last phase. So the crucible is a 3-day testing, essentially, of your skills and abilities and your competencies. And I may get some of these numbers wrong, because I'm kind of just going off of memory on this. But like over the 3 days, there's something like 60 or 70 obstacle courses you have to do. You get between a half hour and 2.5 hours of sleep a night. You're carrying all your gear, so like 80 or 90 pounds. And you're partnered up with someone, like your hooch mate. So you have like this canvas tent, like literally from the Civil War era, like 2 pieces of canvas on 2 sticks, and that's like what you sleep in. But the canvas is kind of heavy, so you split it up with another partner, and they carry half and you carry half, and that's your tent mate or hooch mate or whatever. And so for food over these 3 days, you and your hooch mate in total get 3 meals, like 3 MREs. Between the total.
So 3 total
for the 3 days.
So one and one, and you split one.
Exactly.
Essentially.
Yeah, exactly. So part of this was under poor sleep, under high exhaustion, and low food, low nutrients. Can you work with a team? Can you think? Can you keep composure? Because each of these obstacles weren't just like obstacle courses, like climb a rope or do a thing. A lot of them are problem solving. A lot of them were leadership. Like, hey, you have your squad and you have to assemble this thing and move it across this thing, but don't touch the red parts of the obstacle. And you can only have, 2 people going at a time, and you have 45 seconds, go. So you have to, it's problem solving, leadership, organizing, delegating, because if you're trying to do it all yourself, you're going to fail the obstacle. You can't. So you're doing all of that with poor sleep, high exhaustion, like no food. And so that's the crucible as an overall. And I went to San Diego for boot camp because where I was living in the country at the time, they cut the country in half, and like the east half of the country goes to boot camp in Parris Island, and the west half goes to San Diego. So the final part of the crucible is a hike, right? We're hiking the whole time, but the final part is a hike, and there's up this mountain. They call it Mount Motherfucker, and it is.
Wonder where I got his name.
It's weird. So on day 2, so or they also call it the Grim Reaper. So day 3 is the Grim Reaper. Day 2, we're doing a night hike, and so the scenario here is there's another patrol that's in a firefight, and they're out of ammo, so we have to bring them their ammo. And so we're carrying 2 50 cal ammo cans full of sand and rocks and stuff on top of our rifle and our kit and everything else we're carrying in our packs. And we have to have total light discipline, so there's no flashlights used because we're trying to be sneaky getting up there.
No red lights,
no, nothing. And it's like, I want to say it was like a 3 mile or a 6 mile hike. I don't remember. Someone out there.
Long. It was long.
Well, in comparison, it wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
Someone out there will be able to tell me, or a former drill instructor will be able to tell me, like on the comments here, of like how, what that was really. I don't remember, but it was like I'll call it 3 miles, right? So on this hike in the mountains of California, these trails are like goat trails. Like they're real rocky, real ruddy, and I'm carrying these ammo cans, and I step into a rut and I roll my left ankle. And that kind of sucked. I stepped out of the rut and I rolled it again on another rock or a root or something, and that hurt really bad. And then I stepped again and I rolled a third time and it fractured. And so I fall, I eat shit. I'm on the ground face down with my pack on my back and my helmet smashed in my face into the ground. And the recruit behind me in line picks me up and pushes me to keep going. All right, cool. I'll just keep going. And it wasn't a horrible fracture. It wasn't like bone sticking out or anything, but it was fractured. And our lower leg has two bones, the tibia, which is the main bone that holds your weight. And then there's the fibula that's on the side. It's not necessarily a heavy weight bearing bone, and that's the one that was fractured. So I could keep walking, right? It wasn't physically debilitating. Okay, I could still do it. My leg wasn't like flopping around like you see like in UFC fights. It wasn't like that. And so we get to the end of the hike that day, and I can't get my boot off because my ankle's swollen inside my boot. And so day 3 comes around now, is the Grim Reaper, the final hike up this big mountain. And so going back to some mindset, right? This is where everything in my life up to that point kind of came to a head. I was thinking back to some of the hard things I've done as a kid. Some of the labor I've had to do, some of the just the grit and bear it kind of stuff, right? I go back to that mindset when we start boot camp of like, you know, you're here for the person to your left and right. It's not about you. And I was thinking on the different history of war that we've been through. The Marines that were in Korea, there was a hike called the Frozen Chosen, in the Chosen Reservoir. Marines were hiking and forced march until they were dying. They were hiked and marched to death in the freezing cold. So I thought about stories like that, and I thought about different Medal of Honor recipients, and like people being shot, charging up, you know, toward machine gun bunkers, and still accomplishing the mission to save the people to their left and right. And so I think about my own situation. I was like, it's merely a flesh wound. I have a boo-boo on my ankle. Can I keep going? Yeah, in perspective of all these other things, I can definitely keep going. This is not that bad. I can suck it up and push. And so that kind of perspective is how I approached that, and it's how I approach a lot of things in life, to a detriment. There are things that I put myself into, and I sit in suffering too long because I don't know where that off switch is. I don't know when it's smart to say, you know, this actually isn't healthy. Or maybe I should change my environment. Maybe I should switch jobs because my boss is being XYZ. And I tend to have the mindset of like, yeah, well, I'm not dying, so it's not that bad.
That could be a slippery slope.
Yeah. So there's a balancing point, and it's taken me a long time to find that line. And now that I'm 40, almost 41 years old, I think I've got that pretty locked down. But it took me a long time.
I'm starting to see a trend here of 40-year-olds who are just killing shit. Like maybe in 10 years I'll be
there. You go.
I'll be there. No, but that's an amazing. Wow, there's so many things I could pull from that. I don't even know where to start. Like that's a good way to look at things. Like especially when it's mine. And I tend to when I get minor inconveniences, I'm like why?
Yeah.
You know, and it's like at the end of the day, it's like.
It's not that bad.
Your fucking cameras died and you couldn't record the video.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Big deal.
Yeah. So like when I was in Iraq, I saw these like little kids playing like on the side of the road, and like there was these irrigation ditches, and sometimes the irrigation ditches are sewage water. Sometimes it's for their crops. And these little kids are playing there with like homemade flip-flops made of like old tires and like plastic pop bottles. These kids are as happy as can be, loving life. Not complaining, not looking at themselves, feeling sorry for themselves, loving life because they get to go out and play in the water. And, you know, when I start to feel bad for myself, that perspective right there really is a bit of a gut check.
To equate it to me, like when I think of the kid I used to be, like that's how
Yeah.
That's where I kind of do the same thing where I'm like, I used to pray, I used to dream, and I used to hope for the life I'm living right now, and I forget about that sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Take it for granted.
I do,
Yeah.
I do, and literally it just hit me right now. I'm like, I literally prayed for this life I'm living right now.
Mm-hmm.
Have a strong support system, good job, hobbies I enjoy doing, surround myself with a good circle.
Yeah.
Like growing up, the people I surrounded myself with were people I can survive with.
Mm-hmm.
Were people who we had to lean on each other for survival.
Yeah.
I get to choose who to be around now.
That's right. And having those experiences allows you to live a life of gratitude, to look at the things around you and just be grateful. When people are bitching about this person said that, or my camera died, or, you know, this thing went wrong in my life, the experiences you have allow you to have a position of gratitude. Like, you know what, I can be grateful for this moment because either this is so much better than it could be, or, you know what, I know because I've been through some hard things, I know that this hard thing that I'm going through now will make me better tomorrow. So we can have that position of gratitude.
Yeah, and sometimes it's hard to see that when you're living it, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But always, and I'm speaking for me personally, always, anytime I've gone through a dark moment, a hard time, and I come out of it at the end, I literally look back and I go, wow, man, that was worth it. And I'll equate it to something less severe. Anytime we have to run a mile and a half,
It's
right?
the worst.
Something like,
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I fucking hate running. I hate running. And I'm running it, and I mostly get bored. But, you know, and things start hurting. My lower back starts hurting. I don't get tired. Things just start hurting. I get bored. I get easily distracted. I'm like, this is miserable. This is miserable. But every time I finish, I'm like, man, I feel great. I need to do this more.
Yeah.
I need, like, that wasn't bad. And it's so true. Like, we are formed and we are molded by the hardships we
Absolutely
endure. And a good way to build yourself is do hard things in controlled ways. You know?
I have a plug later talking about this.
Plug it.
Plug it now?
Yeah, plug it.
So-
We're right on track.
So you mentioned Lodestone.
Yes.
Right? So I'm an assistant with Lodestone. I help with some of their classes sometimes. On October 14th, they have an event coming up called the Light Fighter Challenge.
Yes, you've shared it multiple times.
Yes. Did it last year. This is the third year they're doing it. I did it last year for the first time. I'm doing it again this year. It starts with an 8-mile ruck. So like a backpacking, like hike, right? And you have to have 35 pounds in your pack. Then you add water to that, however much water you want to carry. So that you start with this, and it's over uneven terrain. It's not a paved area. It's all rocky, rooty kind of stuff. And after that 8 miles, there's another 2-mile loop. So you're doing 10 miles total. And on this 2-mile loop, there are different challenges like fire starting for time. Last year they did like axe throwing, they did pistol precision, they did rifle precision, they did land navigation. So, just different kind of like outdoor survival skills. They did like a Kim's game where you look at a thing and you have, 30 seconds to look at it, and then you have to do a task and then write down the details of what you saw, that kind of stuff. Like different things to test yourself. And then it's actually a competition. So each item is scored. And we have a ton of sponsors for it this year. Like Aimpoint's a sponsor, Law Tactical Folders is a sponsor. So there's going to be some really cool prizes. And so there's prizes for each individual test. But then there's an overall like grand prize. Like you can win a rifle if you win the whole competition. It's gonna be pretty awesome. But it's doing hard things.
Very hard, yeah.
It's doing hard things.
See what you're made of. Where can people if people want to check this out? Where do they go?
Lodestone Training and Consulting. I think it's lodestonetac.com.
Okay. I'll share it on my Instagram too, because that's a good way to see what you're made of. Maybe and can people do it for fun? Like, let's say they don't want to go to essentially compete.
Right. So since now I'm affiliated with them this year, I wasn't an instructor last year when I did it. I am now. I can't win. So I can't win the grand prize. I don't think I can win any prizes because I'm like a contractor there now. But I'm doing it anyway because I want to test myself, right?
This is my surprised face.
So my
awesome.
My stepson's doing it. My wife's doing it. So, I mean, if you think that you can't do it, you know, my wife, who's a few years older than me, never been in the military, not law enforcement. She just does, you know, things like this with me for fun. If you think you can't,
that's the first problem.
Check yourself.
Yeah, that's the first problem. No, that's awesome. I'm gonna have to look into that. Hopefully, I'm not doing anything. Let's do some sucking together.
I think you're working.
Of course.
Yeah, but
or am I?
Or are you? So doing hard things. I think it's absolutely critical that we test ourselves and we do hard things because it's those hard things that give you the confidence in who you are.
It's a lot. I love it. What going through all that, you know, you're in this environment that has now built you, brought the dog out in you. No pun intended. Devil dogs. What was the deciding factor for you to kind of put that chapter at pause or
for the military?
For the military and then move into a civilian career?
Honestly, my ex-wife.
Okay.
I didn't want to get out. I didn't want to get out of the military. It was too hard for her, and she gave me an ultimatum. And so I had the saying that there are some people that join the Marines and they work for the Marines, and there are some people that join the Marines and they become a Marine. It becomes part of who they are. It's like in their blood. So I feel like I'm kind of that second. I feel like it became part of who I am because it was so formative in helping me pull out of my old environment and kind of remake me into who I am now, in a lot of ways. Not every way. I have a lot of character and characteristics from my time before the Marine Corps, but the Marine Corps gave me a whole new perspective. It gave me a new lease on life. So 2005 rolls around. I'm at the end of my contract, and my wife at the time was like, hey, this is too hard. I didn't realize how hard this was going to be when we got married. I need you to get out. Either you get out or I'm gone, is essentially how it went. And my son at the time was a year and a half old. And in 2005, we're kind of at the peak of a lot of war. And so I'm torn. Like, I did this for the man to my left and right? If I get out, am I being a coward? Am I not there for them? I volunteered to deploy several times. I was canine. I was I had a narcotics dog, and did like a lot of work with our SRT, doing like manhunts and room clearing and stuff like that. So my dog was trained for patrol and aggression as well as narcotics. And I said, hey, I can find people really, really well with my dog. Send me overseas. At that time, you know, there was a lot of stuff going on with Fallujah, a lot of stuff going on in other parts of Iraq. I was like, hey, I can be an asset. And my leadership at the time essentially said, hey, you just got married. So we're not going to send you overseas because we can send somebody else. And so like, all right, fine. So the next deployment cycle came around. Hey, send me. They're like, you just had a kid. So we're not going to send you. We want you to be home with your family. So they were trying to take care of me and allow me to be present for my family, which in retrospect was good, but it denied me the opportunity to do the thing I joined the Marine Corps to do. So I get out in 2005. I start working for Department of Energy in Tennessee, and then in end of 2006, I get a letter from the Marine Corps saying, hey, welcome back. We miss you. We can't live without you. You're being involuntarily recalled to deploy. And part of me was like, man, this kind of sucks. I just got a good job. Part of me was like, yeah.
About time.
Yeah.
About
I get
time.
to do some
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
right? And so I go back in, I get recalled. Some things happened during the first phase of my training and right when I got to Iraq that was very formative in how I spent the rest of my life. And we'll circle back to that and talk about training. So I did my deployment. I'm in Fallujah from August of 07 through like May of 08. And I come back and I go back into civilian life. And again, I wanted to stay in, but it just wasn't the right time, you know? And like we said, there's a purpose for everything. Had I have stayed in, I wouldn't be in Pittsburgh right now. I wouldn't have the family I have right now. I wouldn't have the life I have now. So I have to look at it with that perspective.
You wouldn't have met me.
Exactly.
Huge deal, man. Huge deal. I mean, family and all that's cool.
Yeah, but
I love them. But
there you go.
no, I do believe everything happens for a reason.
So that's why I changed my perspective and why I changed chapters. And honestly, I've been kind of nomadic, kind of searching like where is my role in this life. I spent some time as a city firefighter. I spent some time in federal law enforcement. I spent some time doing like some contracting work, and you know I kind of finally landed on law enforcement, police work, because there is still that sense of like I'm there for the brother and sister to my left and right. There's this sense of I can help protect the community. I can be there for these victims of crime. One of the things that stood out to me when I was a kid, my dad got arrested a lot when I was young. There was one time when he was picked up, and I remember thinking to myself, I don't know, I was probably maybe 4 or 5. No, I wasn't, because they split when I was 4. So I was maybe 3 or 4. I remember thinking to myself, thank God the police are here, because my mom's going to be okay tonight. And it wasn't about like getting the bad guy. It was about helping the victim, right? And that's my perspective now. It's not necessarily about putting the bad guy behind bars, because we know how the court systems are. We can put someone in jail and literally they're out of jail before I'm off shift.
Yeah, man.
Right. So it can't be about
tough. Yeah, that's tough.
It can't be about putting bad guys away or getting justice, or it can't be about that. It has to be about how can I help these victims of this crime? Can I make them feel safe for tonight? Can I let them know that somebody cares? Can I let them know that they're not by themselves, and that when they need help, someone's going to be there?
That is so fulfilling to me, man. Like
that's the only part that's fulfilling, because if you look at it from the perspective of like I'm trying to get justice, each one of us has a perspective of what justice means and what that looks like, and it often does not correlate to the realities of law enforcement, of the court system. They don't line up oftentimes.
That, and I wish a lot of people felt that way, because I personally do. That's how I feel. Like, I don't care how small or how dumb or whatever. Yeah. Like, if I can give someone some sort of closure, or like, some of the calls that we get. Some
of them are like, to us, so you grew up in like inner city Erie, right? So, and I grew up in Chicago. We both have seen some really wild shit. When someone calls us because they can't find their cat, it would be easy to say, seriously, you're calling the police for this? But to that person, that may be like the hardest thing they've ever been through.
That's literally what I was going to say. And that's why I put that in air quotes, because we find ourselves like, really, you're calling the police for this? And It's like, these people, like, if this is the hardest thing they've had to experience,
to them it's an emergency.
But awesome. Like, that's. I'm glad that's it.
Right.
Let me help you.
Yeah.
Like, if I can help you in any way, I will. And to me, it doesn't matter how small or how big, because they're calling you because you are an answer for them.
Yeah.
Like, this is the biggest thing that's happened to them, and they need help.
Yep.
And for us, it's like, for some people, it could be like, oh my God, it's a cat. For this person, this cat could be like the thing that got them through a hard time, a tough time.
Yep.
Like, we don't get to pick and choose the hero we get to be today or tomorrow. Like, I've always...
Now, there are some that are like stupid. Like, if you call me because someone moved your shovel on your porch, I don't know.
That was their shovel, man. That was their shovel.
I've had that call.
What about have you had the call of my neighbor mowed a foot into my yard?
Yes. So there's some petty stuff out there too, right?
And even that, I literally go and I'm like, I'm gonna talk to your neighbor for you, and they're like, thank you so much. I'm like, you're welcome.
Dude, imagine if they. So here's another perspective on that. Maybe they know they have an anger problem, and if they go talk to the neighbor, it's gonna get bad.
Yeah, that's a good perspective. That's a good way. Yeah, and then
I kind of want to say like be an adult and manage it, but at the same time, if you're preventing a fight or something going really bad, you see that YouTube video where someone was throwing snow across the street, the dude came out and shot him.
Oh yeah, it was a neighbor dispute.
Yeah, it was a neighbor dispute. Like neighbor disputes can be nasty. And maybe it's just that one thing that pushes them over the edge. Like, you mowed into my rose bush. And
you know what? I'm changing my perspective from that, because that is true, man. The next call we're getting is a shootout between neighbors because this thing just
they mowed into the yard.
Hey, HOA don't play. Hashtag.
Yeah, there you go.
What things did you learn in the military that kind of set you up for your law enforcement career, and that, like, your stance on training? That's we're just gonna dive into that. Your military, your LEO career, like, how do you view training first? We'll go over, like, what does training mean to you? In the sense of for what you do.
Yeah. So to me, I'll approach it first from the mindset of, like, let's say we're going to the gym, right? People can go to the gym and exercise, or they can go to the gym and train. If you're going to the gym to train, it's because you're going after something specific. You have a purpose and a reason to be there. I go to the gym to train because I'm trying to make myself either stronger or more explosive, or work on my cardio. I'm working on something because I see a deficiency. There's something that I see that I need. Or I could just go and exercise, and that's like a mindless check the box. Okay, I did this thing today. I walked for a half mile and I did 5 bicep curls, and okay, I went and exercised. There's a difference between movement and training with a deliberate intent. Now, when I think about the training that we're talking about, whether that's firearms training, BJJ, combatives, those sorts of things, it's similar. Or even like the outdoor skills like land nav, fire starting, wilderness survival. It's because I have intent. And I have intent because I might need these things. I have intent because I see I'm deficient with something. Or that I can be that thing that helps somebody else. It's my brother and sister to my left and right that would be depending on me. And am I going to be the best backup for that person? Am I going to be the best protector for my family? Am I going to be able to pass on my knowledge to my family so that they don't need me?
Imagine if more people thought like that.
That'd be awesome. So here's where my perspective on training changed. So when I was in the Marine Corps, I was a Marine Corps martial arts instructor for my first 4 years. And my mindset then was, all right, I'm training these guys. They're going to be my backup. In the Marine Corps, in K9, we were doing like raids with SRT sometimes. We were helping out, with different agencies. We had like a joint agency thing we did sometimes. And I wanted my guys that I was working with to be able to handle themselves physically if they didn't, have their dog next to them, or if they couldn't get to their gun. And there's a lot of times when a gun isn't the appropriate answer. If we look at the whole use of force, deadly force is like this much in the very top, and there's all kinds of stuff short of deadly force. A gun is only the answer when it's the answer, right? Everything less than that requires, some other skill, some other application. So I wanted to teach my guys that. So I got out in 05, and then when I got recalled back in, I did my training. I deployed. I got to Iraq, and I had a phone call I could make. And so I'm a mama's boy. So I called my mom. I was like, "Hey, Mom, I'm here. I made it." And like, she's bawling her eyes out, like, boo-hooing on the phone. I was like, "Mom, I'm fine. I'm good. I'm with a good group of guys. Don't worry about me." She's like, "No, I'm not. Your sister just got raped at knife point. She's in the hospital." And it happened like within hours of me calling her. And so here I am, literally on the other side of the world. I can't do anything about it. And I'm thinking to myself, man, what if I had talked to my sister? What if I had passed on some of this to her? Could I have helped in some way? Could I have helped her prevent that in some way? And so to me, that was when the switch flipped of like trying to train warriors and like, badasses to like, man, everybody needs this. Everybody needs something. Everybody needs to know how to manage and protect themselves. There are bad people in this world. There are wolves that'll prey on sheep. My goal is to give people claws and teeth and a means to protect themselves against those that don't care. There are people in this world that just don't give a fuck, and they will eat your soul and not think twice about it. So it's up to us to be able to be that thing in between. So to me, training is with intent, and that's the intent for me. Because there are people in this world that don't give a fuck.
When you put it like that, you can't skip a day. You just can't. Because to you, and like people who think like that, it all rides on this training day. And if you approach your training days like that, you're going to become mini Ash.
I don't know if that's a good thing.
No, that's that's a different way to look at it. And because when I approach training, I love, like you said, with the gym, like training rather like I don't go, I'm going to go lift at the gym. I'm going to go train.
Right.
Because I have a specific goal in mind. And once I shifted my mindset to the, why am I training what I'm training today? Why am I, like, what am I working on in jiu-jitsu today? Even though a lot of the curriculum is fixed, but for open mat or something, like, what am I training today? It gives you a sense of purpose and a sense of like, kind of like a little fire under your ass to like make sure it gets done and it gets done correctly.
Yeah. And it can help you organize your training approach as well. Jess and I like to do this thing where we look at like, what is my intention? Like, what do I want to work on? Like, so next year we're thinking about doing like this really, really big hike, this really big like mountain hike. And so maybe for the next 6 or 8 months, we need to build our capacity more. So I'm not worried about PRing my deadlift. I'm not worried about PRing my bench press or my squat. I want to be able to hike 15 miles with a 50-pound pack, or whatever that is. So if you have a perspective, you can guide how you're doing your training. We do the same thing with the tactical stuff too. Like, what is our intention? So, and we do this matrix with this little kind of like a flow chart. We have columns on the left, and then or I guess 2 rows that go across and 2 columns that go down, and we break it down into things of like, here's what I need and here's what I want, and what am I proficient in, what am I deficient in. And so like we look at like a course calendar of training. As an example, we would go to the Lodestone page and like look at like, oh, we have wilderness survival, and we have a 5-day weapons class, and then there's this land nav class, and like there's so much you can do, and whether it's them or Shivworks. So we have Shivworks coming up this week. We only have so much time, we only have so much resources, we only have so much money to put into classes. So we have to prioritize what do we want versus what do we need. And so we'll make a list of things that we're deficient in. Like Jess is getting into ham radio. So she's got her general license for ham radio. And so for her, that would be something that she's proficient in, that she wants to do, but it's not something that is an urgent need. We don't urgently need her to get more ham radio license, but maybe we need to urgently get her more rifle training because most of the training she's done is with pistol. Or maybe we need to urgently get her more field expedient medical care because her background is in medicine, and that's what she does. So we kind of look at what we want to do for the next year. We make a list of all the classes we want to try to do and then put them into 2 categories. What's urgent and not urgent, and what are we proficient in and not proficient in. And those things that we are not proficient in and is urgent, that's the thing that we do first, even if it's not what we want to do. Like, I don't want to go running. I don't want to,
I don't blame you.
Yeah. So here, I think I'm allergic to it because, like, I start breathing hard. I start sweating. My blood pressure increases.
I got the same damn allergy.
You know what I mean? Like, those are all signs of an allergic reaction, I think. Like, it's hard to breathe.
I'm using that. I'm allergic to running. So you have this end goal for
training in general.
In general. Now, is there something you do like daily or weekly to what's the word I'm looking for? Supplement that goal. For example, one of my goals right now is to get a little more proficient in jiu-jitsu. Like, it's something I'm starting to dive into. With that, I'm also training daily lifting because I want to get stronger. I want to keep my size, which is kind of an oxymoron with jiu-jitsu and training. But I'm also now working on mobility stuff.
Good. Because
that's going to help my everyday stuff, my jiu-jitsu, and it actually helps you lift heavier. For those of you who don't know, I just learned that. Being more mobile actually allows you to hit a lot more of your muscle fibers than you normally would. Mm-hmm. So for my example, my goal is jiu-jitsu. I'm structuring how many days I'm going, what type of trainings. I'm doing drilling on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Cool. And then at night, I'll go to an open mat. But I'm also lifting and all that stuff.
So what do I do? So one, I have a priority of my family. We work weird shifts sometimes, right? They're long shifts. So on those days where I work a lot of long shifts, maybe I only have 2 days off that week. So now I prioritize what am I going to do those days so that I can maximize the time with my family. So if I'm going to lift or work out on a day that I work, I do it before I go to work. So I'm not eating into my family time after work. If I don't have a lot of time, I'll do something like dry fire for 5 minutes on pistol, dry fire for 5 minutes on rifle. I try to do that every day. I don't every day, but I try to. I try to, and I have a structure of what I'm doing for training, right? I told you I'm working more on capacity right now. So I have a 2-week schedule that I write out because our work shifts kind of go in like a 2-week cycle. So I have a 2-week schedule of like, hey, on week 1, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, whatever, this is what I do on each day. On week 2, because we're working different days on week 2, I have it written out what I'm going to do each day on week 2, and that just cycles every 2 weeks. So what do I do each day? So each week I'll look at my calendar of events on like my little iPhone. Like today, the podcast is on here, and there's some things I need to do when I get home, and so those are all prioritized on my day. But I always make a priority to do some kind of physical training, and maybe it's just mobility work. Maybe I only have 30 to 40 minutes to work on range of motion, to work on my neck stability because I had that neck injury. Maybe it's just a little bit of time, but I put it on my calendar and I make sure it happens. It becomes sacred time. 5 to 10 minutes a day of dry fire work with pistol and rifle. I try to do that every day. And then I try to get to jiu-jitsu no less than once a week. I try to make it twice a week. But that's the thing for me that's flexible If I only have 2 days off that week, I'm not going to spend both of those days at jiu-jitsu.
You'll forego, yeah.
I'll spend that time with my family.
Do you stretch? I know that's a dumb question, but like, do you focus on stretching or do you focus on mobility work? Have you ever done yoga? That's something I'm looking into.
Yeah, I like yoga.
Getting into because it's supposed to open you up. Like if you stick with it and stuff like that.
I like yoga. I do deliberate mobility days, and for me, mobility is strength through range of motion.
Okay.
It's not just stretching. It's things like halos with the kettlebell, windmills. I sent you that video.
Yeah, that was an awesome video.
So doing windmills, like that's mobility for my shoulders, but there's resistance behind it. So it's not just stretching, but it's range of motion with resistance. Because anyone can be flexible and stretchy, that doesn't make you healthy and safe. If you get to that end range of motion, but you don't have the musculature to control your body position in that position, that can be unsafe. You can have joint injuries from being hypermobile. You don't have that problem.
What's the opposite of hyper? Hypomobile. Yep. I'm hypomobile.
Yes, you are.
They're like, yeah, that's a story for another time. I'm working on it though. Always small progress.
That's kind of like what I do each week, just to keep my finger on the pulse of what I'm doing.
So you kind of encompass an array, like you mentioned, dry fire drills. Like this isn't even embarrassing to say, but I schedule that in like once a week.
Sure.
Maybe that's something where I'm not doing it for 30 minutes on Wednesday. I'm doing it for 5 minutes on Monday, 5 minutes on Tuesday, and maybe Thursday I apply it at the range or something like that.
There you go.
Because
the concept of do a little, a lot. If you just do like 5 minutes a day, that adds up, And sometimes what I'll do is like I'll just pick a spot on the wall, and I'm just focusing on, can I get my red dot? Can I get a quick acquisition with my red dot? Or maybe it's I have a little pro timer and I want to try to get a clean trigger press in less than a second from concealment. Or can I do a reload in a certain amount of time? So there's like little skills I'll work on. But if I say, hey, I have 5 minutes, there's no reason not to. But if I have to say, I need a 30 to 40 minute block, I'll find excuses not to do it.
Yeah, no, it's easy to blow off, because that's a big part of my day that I could be doing. But 5 minutes, you're like,
I got 5 minutes.
Let me get it done.
Yeah.
All my light switches are dead in my house, by the way. I've blasted them all off. I do that too, because the light switches are so small, hyper fixed. You gotta like really focus on your draw, your trigger control. So yeah, they're all dead. One thing I do want to get into with you is your view on leadership, because it's random. I get it, but we've had a lot of conversations with things that have happened, surrounding us, and you've called me out when I'm wrong.
Likewise,
you've when I'm so, and I would say we're similar in a lot of ways. And I'll be like, I'll act first, and then I'll be like, right, James, and you'll be like, well, wrong.
I don't know if that.
No, tactfully, like you're very, very well spoken. But I view you as a leader, and that's kind of cringe and corny to say. Like a conversation we had before, like we don't. I appreciate that. I'm not a leader, man. We're not leaders. We're just doing what we have to do. But I do view you as a leader in order, like. For example, the DT stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
You have a lot more experience in that realm. I mean, you basically single-handedly created the curriculum for us.
No,
But
yeah,
put it together. I put it together. You put together the curriculum.
So we'll throw this out there because I want to give credit where credit's due. The vast majority of our DT curriculum comes from like the ShivWorks program.
Yeah, Craig's an awesome dude. I'm gonna show up, but I can't be there, and
I know.
But whatever.
But I want to say that because it's I think giving credit where credit's due is absolutely critical.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's not my It's not my invention. A lot of it was taken from things that he's said and taught. And I teach my own way. I don't teach it necessarily exactly how he teaches. I've been teaching for a long time, but and you even showed me some things this last week of like, hey, if we do this at these moments, at these times when you're seeing the students doing these things, I'm like, wow, that's awesome. And I'm going to take what you said and I'm going to steal it and I'm going to apply it and use it.
I heard this. I don't know who I heard this from, but as an instructor, you are a professional thief because you take away from all these instructors you've gone to, and you apply it in your way. And you know, I'm nothing special. I literally take things that have worked for me and I've seen work, and I just put it all together and I present it and I give credit where credit's due. Like Craig Douglas, a lot of the stuff we do is his stuff.
Yeah.
So when I say created, I mean you put together, you organized it, you structured it in ways that are digestible, which is huge because you can throw a bunch of words on a fucking paper and but very digestible, applicable. Things like what it was funny because we were having this conversation about this last training day we had.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like in my head, I'm like, man, like, how is James going to say this? How is James going to hit this? How is James going to present this? How is James going to... And then you reach out, you're like, dude, like, you know the material, like...
Just do it.
Just do it how you would do it.
Right.
And I'm like, but you're going to hit this point. Like, I got to make sure. And you're just like...
Just do it how
just do it, man.
Yeah.
And I remember I was driving, I parked, and I'm sitting there looking at the curriculum, and I'm like... And you had messaged me right there, and I was like, don't worry, man, we got this. Like, I was just like, fake it till you make it. No. But in my head, I was like, you know what? Like, I got this. Like, I study Craig's stuff all the time. I mean, he puts little snippets on Instagram and stuff. But taking his class, I know exactly where. And, like, the awesome thing I love about Craig is he's honest, he's open, and he'll tell you, you can record the class. I don't care, man. I'm here for you. I want you to take it back to your departments. I just ask that you respect my art because this is how I make a living.
Yep.
Don't just post this out there.
Sure.
Like, and as a professional, you can respect that.
Absolutely.
Like, I've gone to classes where I've had my phone out and they're like, whoa, put the phone away. I'm like, what? Like, no recording. And like that automatically puts me off. I'm like, dude, I'm a grown ass man. If I want to be on my phone, I'm gonna be on my phone. I paid to be here. Like I'm on my break.
And and here's a difference too, though. Like I think a lot of the people that come to Craig's classes, they draw a different caliber of person. You have to be a special kind of crazy to volunteer and pay to show up to do some of those things. It's a very self-selecting group of people. And with that self-selecting group of people, there tends to be a high degree of integrity as well. So I think he probably has less of a problem with that because of the type of crowd that he draws. So the class last year, we had 18 people there, and some of them were from Montana, some were from like North Dakota, 3 of them were from other countries, but there's only 18 people. So we look at the breadth of reach of that class. Several states, several countries, only 18 showed up. We almost didn't fill the class this year. It almost got canceled.
Yeah, man, I was worried about that.
So it's a very niche, self-selecting group of people that would volunteer themselves to do hard things. Because anyone that has any experience with Craig's work, his videos, the evolutions, you're going to be tested and you're going to be humbled. I've never gone through one of his classes and been like, dude, I'm the fucking man. I've been humbled and put in my place and learned something about myself every single time. And it takes a special kind of internal strength for people to try to show up and do that and say, you know what, I'm willing to be humbled. Those kinds of people, if you say, hey, if you can record this, but don't do some silly shit with it, those kinds of people will be like, I got you. When you take a different kind of class where it's full of people that maybe don't
egos,
have
man,
tons,
egos.
Right. So,
I'll say it, egos. It's a lot of ego.
Yeah.
You know, I've gone to classes and dude's trying to put a beating on me, and I'm like, bro, we're testing the material he just gave us. Now you're going to make me resort to survival.
Right. And that makes everything.
Who learns from that?
Right.
I'm trying to put my elbow through your face because I have to like match your energy now, because if I don't, you're just going to go unchecked.
Exactly.
And you're going to hurt someone else. Like, sure, feel free to hurt me, try to hurt me, but like, not everyone comes in here with that mentality of like, and that's an interesting thing, because we had those 3 individuals in Craig's class, and the one, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Super humble dude.
Super humble, a little smaller.
Yeah.
The fight in that man.
Yeah. I would not want to be on the receiving end of that.
I was on the receiving end of it.
Yeah.
I was.
Yeah, I know.
You know, and
Yeah,
like
so was I.
first day, you know, and correct. I mean, I don't know if you do this or not, but first day, I try to look at people and I go, I may be all right with that one. That one's going to give me trouble. Like, I'll never say I can take that one, because you never know, especially in a class like this, dude. Everyone's coming with something, So I'm like, yo, that one's going to be, and we're gonna call him Lil O. And I'm like, Lil O, man, like that dude's he's a
Little pit bull.
dude.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't stop. Like, and Craig's like, all right, go about 30% to go for the movements. And you look over and they're like bashing each other's faces.
And guess what? That was 30%.
Yeah. Well, and I later found out, you
Yeah.
know, that was his 30%, because when we went to the evolution and I got paired with this dude,
Yep.
every time I thought I had something, he just kept coming and kept coming and kept coming. And I'm like, dude, if that's your outlook in life and that's your perspective in life, get out of his way, because he is going to steamroll you.
Absolutely.
And that is, I admire people. I pulled so much inspiration from that class, from those individuals specifically, and everyone who was in that class, man. Like, people from our department, you know.
Can I pause real quick?
Yeah, please. We're gonna take a tack pause,
Tack pause. Cool.
and we're back.
And we're back. So you were saying the people in our with our work, they went to that class.
Yeah. So the one, he doesn't train regularly. Actually, we used to do, when we used to go to Lou's and we would do the combatives there. He went once or twice, and he's like, man, like I don't feel comfortable with this. Like, how do I start jiu-jitsu? This.
Oh, right. Yeah.
He showed up and blew my mind. Just, it was hard.
To DM?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was hard.
Yeah.
It was tough. He acknowledged it.
And he pushed through.
And he pushed.
Yeah.
He pushed through.
It was awesome. And then he used it.
Oh, yes.
Then he used it. So, like, it was the next day or 2 days later, he was on shift, and he was trying to control, like, this 400-pound autistic juvenile. And he used the split seatbelt to get this guy under control.
With no harm.
Yeah, didn't have to hurt the guy. Now, to preface, that's not always possible. Sometimes you can't control someone without harm. It just doesn't happen, right? But he was able to.
I did hear about that. I forgot about that. And I mentioned this, like, and that's why I love training. And that's why I love teaching, teaching. That's why I love instructing, helping people, like, get that out of them. Because when we did the first DT day, one of our sergeants used what we introduced that day.
Yes.
And like the next week.
Yeah. And this sergeant is not someone who is super athletic.
No.
At all. Like he's not like overweight or out of shape or anything like that, but he's not an athlete like you and I might be. He doesn't train at the gym.
No, but yeah, I know exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why this stuff is like training and all that's so good, because you don't have to be an athlete,
right,
to be able to defend yourself.
Correct.
You don't have to be now.
It helps.
It helps. Like I'm all for training, eating. Oh, I need to eat better, but like eating good.
Sure.
Practicing combatives. Combatives is different than jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu can be applied in combatives, but when someone brings out a pokey thing,
it looks a little different.
It looks a little different.
Yeah.
And I'm a big proponent of training and pushing. See where you're at, man. Like, that's one of the biggest things. I used to fight MMA back in the day, and I say MMA loosely because we were in a basement. But I fought every day growing up, every day in the street.
Sure.
And like you kind of like get so comfortable, right? Because street fighting is different than actual fighting. And then I started to learn how to fight.
Mm-hmm.
And I started fighting a lot less.
Yes. You get a confidence, and you realize a couple of things. This is what happened for me. I realized this hurts every time I do it.
Yes.
I don't necessarily want to do it, but then you also know your capabilities, and you get confidence, and you don't feel like you always have to prove yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to prove yourself.
Dude, yeah. Everyone should train. Everyone go sign up your local gyms. Leadership.
Yes.
What's a leader to you? What does leadership mean?
The first thing that comes to mind is taking care of those around you. Servant leadership, leading out of love, doing the right thing at the right time for the right reason. There's a balance between, let's say work leadership, right? As an example, there's a task that has to get done, but you also have people to take care of. Right? You need to take care of your men, stand up for your men, the people under your charge. As a leader, your primary responsibility is mission accomplishment. You have to accomplish the mission, whatever that is, right? But equal to that is you need to take care of your people. If the people underneath you, let's say, well, and I'm looking at it from like a structural approach right now. Like, let's say when I was in the Marines, I was a sergeant, and I have people that I'm in charge of, right? Now, being in charge doesn't make you a leader, and you don't have to be in charge to be a leader. You can lead without being a supervisor. And I know a lot of supervisors that are not leaders, they're bosses or they're managers. Managing and leading is very different, and the difference is in how you take care of your people.
Yeah, that's basically how I look at it. I view leadership as you're an influence in a positive way with those around you towards a specific goal or a specific mission. Especially in policing now, there's not a lot of leaders anymore, man. And
Yeah.
Fucking rip me apart in the comments if you want. I think it's become a thing to do, like, anymore, and it's frustrating because we're surrounded by good people. I'm surrounded by a lot of good leaders.
Sure.
I try to be, but there's some people out there where you're just like, dude, what are you doing? Why?
I think this is something that I've noticed, and I could be off, but this is my experience. When I was a city firefighter, we were a unit. Like, when I worked at the busiest firehouse in the city, and there were 8 of us there, 4 of us on the truck, 4 of us on the engine, and if there was a call, all 4 went out together. You had your lieutenant or your captain, and then like 3 firefighters. You're working as a team. There was a lot of camaraderie and bonding and shared suffering that you guys did together. You were all at the same call at the same time, so you saw the same things. You're dealing with the same things. You can come back and like debrief it, and it's always like the same 4 people. And the leadership and the camaraderie and the approach there was the closest thing I'd ever seen outside of the Marine Corps that had that sense of cohesion and unity. In law enforcement and police work, what I see is a lot of individual people looking out for number one. It's about me. It's not about the team. It's not about a unit. It's all about, how can I make myself look better? How can I get ahead of this other person? How can I do me? And I think that kind of thing breaks down your ability to lead if you're always thinking about me. And if all your people are wired that way, it's really hard to, it's not impossible. It's hard to lead a group like that.
And it translates to life too. Like I try my best to help others. Like, for example, I do a lot of logos and stuff on the side.
Mm-hmm.
I've created logos for companies who have taken off. And this is kind of like a little bit of my ego in the way. And I acknowledge that, which is why I never say anything. And I'm just like, you couldn't say a thank you? Like a thank you or like
Sure.
never a credit, anything. And I never did it to get
I was
that.
going to say, is your intention of
My intention is, and this is where I check myself, because like my intention is I'll make a logo for you. I want your company to be the biggest company in the world. And if this is what's stopping you is your branding, I'll do that for you because I think you can, like, I believe in your company. And I'll do logos for companies or branding for companies that I believe in, and I'll never charge a thing.
Sure.
And then they take off, and I'm like, I get excited. And then this is where where that foul personality comes in. I'll like reach out to them like, man, like you're doing great. You're doing incredible. Da, da, da. And then they just shit on me. And I'm like, dude, what? Just because I'm still at the bottom? Like, but my whole goal was to help them.
Yep.
And
you have to go back to that original touch point.
yeah,
You have to.
and it's that perspective thing.
Right. If I give someone $20, I give them $20, right? I don't, if I did that as a gift, then I'm not expecting them to pay it back. I'm not expecting them to tell their friends, hey, James gave me $20.
That I turned into $1,000.
Right, yeah. Right. No, I have to look at that perspective of like, I did what I did for my reasons. What you do is for your reasons.
And all that. And so I got into that because of like, I try to help as much as I can, be selfless. Like, cause that's how I grew, like, especially, being a faith-driven man, like be your brother's keeper. And if you, and I've noticed like when I put my personal things away and I make a deliberate action to help someone out of the kindness of my heart, things start happening to me, good things. And I start feeling better about myself. I start feeling better about the world and things are happening. And we've turned into a culture where it's like, it's all about me. How do I get ahead? How do I, and you burn a lot of bridges. You hurt a lot of people. You destroy a lot of relationships when you approach things from that way. And I think your childhood and your career in the military and stuff has made you very selfless. And I think that's why we kind of like
click a little bit. Yeah.
Because when I approach you, I'm like, how can I help James? And then when you approach me, it's how can I help Ish? And this, I don't know why this takes me back to that Belgian horse thing you sent me, where it's like one Belgian horse can pull what? It's like
12 to 14,000 pounds.
12 to 14,000.
Yeah.
And then when you put two Belgian horses together,
they should be able to pull
24,000 max.
Right.
Or 28,000.
Right.
But they actually pull more than 30,000, was it pounds or whatever?
Right.
Because they are bouncing off each other.
They're pushing each other.
Motivating each other. And it just compounds. And I think that is what we need to get back to as a society of help your brother, push them, drive them. And hopefully that person does that for you as well. So then you start surrounding yourself by just a group of motivated, disciplined monsters.
And here's the challenge in that is maybe you're working like a Belgian horse and maybe there's someone, let's say someone at work or someone that's a friend or maybe a family member, and you're like, all right, I'm going to push this person. I'm going to push them. But they're not a Belgian horse.
They're a donkey.
They're a donkey. They're going to resent you. They're going to rebel against you. They're going to do the opposite. So just as important as it is to try to push people, it's also important to recognize where your efforts are best used. Because some folks don't respond well to that. And honestly, they need to be able, they need to want to help themselves first. They need to want to improve. And some people just don't want to. And you can't change that.
Man, we touched on this on the last episode too, and it's, I have two people are saying it must be true. No, but that's, no, you can't, like, at some point you got to take accountability for your own self, and you can't give that to someone. You can't give them, or hopefully you can instill it, but at the end of the day.
But you know what? It's not your job to.
It's not your job to.
They own the direction of their life.
And that's what I struggle with sometimes, man. I think I see all this greatness in someone, and I'll pour myself, and then I take their disregard of that almost as disrespect, and that's where I need to be like, who the fuck am I to?
It's not. They're just either one, they're not ready for it yet, they're not mature enough, or they just don't care. And there's a lot of people out there that just don't care.
Yeah.
It's the truth, though.
Yeah, no, that is. If you can leave the listeners with one thing that hopefully someone catches the last part of this podcast.
Man, if they're listening this long,
no, you'd be surprised, man.
Take a nap.
People have messaged me and they're like, dude, it took me 3 days to, like, on rides to listen. I finally got through it. I'm like, dude, I appreciate you sticking it out, because I talk a lot.
Yeah.
And initially, these were supposed to be 15-minute episodes.
I blew that one up.
We all have. Every episode has been plus an hour. Sure. So I think people can take away a lot of from a lot of things you've said. So I appreciate you being here. What's one thing that keeps you going every day? Keeps you motivated, keeps you inspired.
The concept of integrity. Integrity is doing the right thing at the right time for the right reason. You can do the right thing at the right time, but if you're doing it because you want someone to see you, or you want someone to I want to look good, or I want this person to be in, like, I want to suck up to this guy, or I want to make sure that this person sees me doing this thing. That's not integrity.
Although it may look like
it looks like integrity.
Yes. Wow.
It's not integrity. Do the right thing at the right time for the right reason.
Damn. Well, I couldn't have said it better, folks. So I do appreciate you coming down here, man. You got a million things you could be doing, and here you are on my Low O podcast. So I do appreciate you.
I'm honored, and look forward to seeing more of these.
Yeah. Oh, man. Just because of that, you will.
Cool.
All right, folks. This is the one with Ash. I appreciate you guys for listening. Later.
See ya.
You've been listening to The Relentless Project. Ish Lopez grew up in the heart of the inner city, but he managed to build multiple income streams, join the ranks of law enforcement, and dive into countless ventures, all thanks to the incredible relationships he forged along the way. And now his passion is to share those stories with you. Make sure to connect with us on social media. Find Ish on Twitter and Instagram at The Ish Lopez, and the show at Relentless PRJCT. We're on all the major streaming platforms, from Spotify to Apple Podcast and Google Podcast, and wherever you like to catch your favorite shows. See you next time on The Relentless Project.